baby gorillas? Are we in business? Oh, come on, let's see what's going on. YouTube. Oh. Now what I've done. Are we in business? Oh yeah. Oh, come on, let's see what's going on. Looks like we're up. I don't know where my advert is. Hope this is monetised. They keep demonetising me on YouTube. That's a very fly way to not pay you what you're due. Demonetise you at the start of when you get the most views. We already know this channel's getting suppressed anyway. How's it all going? It's only me. How you doing, Robert? Good to see you, brother. So, what are we talking about today? Let me just see what else this guy's saying. YouTube. Oh yeah. Oh, come on, like I'm getting tertiary. Yeah, good, Robert. How you doing, buddy? You well? So, what are we talking about today? Let's go and talk about the poison chalice of the Conservative Party leadership. And is anybody going to be able to turn the Conservative Party round at this stage, or is the Conservative Party doomed to a massive loss at the next general election? Will Rishi Sunak be the shortest Prime Minister since, what's her name? We can't even remember her name now. She was the shortest, but will he be like the second shortest? I mean, you can only have a couple of years, and all he seems to be doing is bringing in the WEF agenda in conjunction with Keir Starmer, who will then forward the WEF agenda in the UK. So we've got globalist shill politicians, even though Britain's voted against it, following the agenda for WEF and the globalist ambitions. So between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, it'll just be a continuation of the WEF agenda. And they'll do it sneakily because they know we've voted against it. But if you've got WEF adjacent politicians leading the country, then you're not going to get any change in your politics, are you? So is the current leadership of the Conservative Party a poison chalice? Now, I've said this, I think I've said this before. And would a change in leadership, because obviously nobody likes wee Big Nose, because he is a shill for the globalists, and we all know it, that his tenure is going to be short-lived. Now, if the Conservative Party change him, because he's done nothing in the polls, and the Conservative Party are brutal for getting rid, as we know, from, what's her name? Not May, although she was equally bad. What's her name who won? Liz Truss. So the shortest Prime Minister since Liz Truss. Hi mate, how's you? Good, you're good. Thanks. We're all corrupt. Yeah, certainly are. Rishi Washy was a WEF Lacey, of course. So
there are more trouble.
Wait a minute. Just stand by, Maya. So even if the Rishi was replaced, is the current leadership, because we've been in 12 years and they've just continued with the WEF agenda and they've not been conservative and have not done the things that they were meant to do, because the Conservative Party are riven with WEF members, just like the so-called Liberals under Turdo, the commie in Canada. And he's just a shill, just like Big Nose Sunak. And we're seeing no bounce in the polls, which I covered last night, under Rishi's time. But even if he's replaced, have the Conservative Party ran out of ideas because they haven't implemented what they should have implemented? the parliamentary party have kicked out Liz Truss, although the membership voted for him in an undiplomatic way, and now we've got Big Nose who's trying to sell us out on the Northern Ireland agreement. Done nothing, caused hyperinflation, not hyperinflation, but significant inflation, destroyed small businesses, handed out money like confetti over a virus that we shouldn't have been locked in the house for, that destroyed British businesses. And now he's in power. And let me just, I'm going to do that, I'll look at that later. Now he's in power, and there's no bounce in the Conservative Party, and the Conservative Party and the MPs must be looking at him going, we're all going to lose our jobs because you have got no charisma, no point of converting the red wall Conservatives back, or retaining them as Conservative seats. You have done nothing outside push the WEF agenda. And has it got to the stage that it's not going to matter even if you got somebody competent as the Conservative leader? Is it better? It's not better for the Conservatives, because the Conservatives are going to lose a significant proportion of their seats. So if they're 20 points behind, they may be as low as 100 seats from 320. So they're all white knuckle ride. I think there's English council elections coming up. And if they're a disaster, which I think they will be for the Conservative Party, or even if they just hold, if it's a sort of loss but a soft loss, it's going to be still a disaster for Rishi Sunak. And a 20-point lead, even if that's like 5%, 6% wrong, it would have to be significantly wrong in the country for them to claw back a 20% lead. I think Corbyn had a 20% lead midterms. But I don't think that he can claw it back. I don't think he can claw it back. So is somebody like Mogg or Andrew, what's his face, is a potential rival to Rishi Big Nose is put Mogg on the back benches, which is very dangerous because Mogg is a significant political influence. So let's see what this is. So this is a few years ago. So let's find out from LBC why Mogg wouldn't stand as the next Conservative leader. Now, as far as I could have seen, Mogg's ideal time would have been to stand against Liz Truss and Big Nose Sunak, the globalist shill.
No, some of you need to get something out of your system because it's just not going to happen. And that is that Theresa May should be replaced by Jacob Rees-Mogg. Anyone that believes that Jacob Rees-Mogg is going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party needs to visit a psychiatrist, basically, because they clearly don't understand the system that the Conservative Party uses for electing their leader. And that's why I think even Jacob Rees-Mogg would admit that he doesn't stand a chance, because the MPs have the first choice, and the two candidates that the MPs choose then go to the party membership.
So this is why the problem is the Conservative Party, and especially the MPs. I don't know how the MPs are selected internally if they're appointed by central office. That probably explains the problem with WEF. So once you control the parliamentary party, and if they're appointed by internally, so the parliamentary party then appoints the way the MPs are elected. We'll look at this in a minute. Then they can just put their guys through, and then they've got a whole bunch of WEF people who are just going to be yes men and women to the WEF agenda, which is adversely affecting you and I.
In the country. Now, if Jacob Rees-Mogg got through to the second round to the party membership, he would stand quite a good chance, I would say.
But what the parliamentary party are trying to do is cut out the parliamentary party, because the the constituency and the grassroots membership out voting. That's how Big Nose Sunak get parachuted in and completely undemocratically elected. So that's why he won't stand a chance probably at the next general election, apart from being terribly uncharismatic.
But he's not going to do that, because he would get the support of maybe a couple, maybe 3 dozen MPs, if that. I suspect it might be considerably lower than that.
Well, I'm gobsmacked. That just shows you how infiltrated WEF is into the Parliamentary Party, because Mogg, as a Prime Minister, would do fantastically well. He's highly intelligent. He's sort of traditionally conservative, and he would do incredibly well, I think, with the general public. He would be very liked. Brexiteer. He's very eloquent. He's articulate. He's very humble as well. And he's a throwback to bygone time in British politics.
That's not me criticising Jacob Rees-Mogg. It's just a statement of fact.
And he's not wrong. Ian Dale is not wrong in the fact that but that means that Christopher Hitchens. Wait a minute until I get this correct. No, so I was a big fan of Christopher Hitchens. He was I think a Trotsky as well as his brother. So it's his brother that I'm looking for. Christopher Hitchens' brother. So Christopher Hitchens' brother is here we go. Christopher Eric Hitchens. What? If I get the right, where is this? So Peter Hitchens. So Peter Hitchens is completely right in his analysis. It can sometimes come across a bit obscure, and he had a great conversation with who was it? Aaron Bastani. And if you haven't seen that conversation, because Peter Hitchens, like Christopher Hitchens, as far as I'm aware, was always on the left, and Peter Hitchens got a sort of an epiphany, quite correctly, that communism and the various branches of communism doesn't work. And he had wrapped himself up in his identity as being a communist. I think he was a Trotskyist, as far as I'm aware. And he was wrapped up in these Trotskyist ideas. And he talking to Aaron Bastani of Narvada Media, was saying that these ideas don't work, and that's an older man. But what Peter Hitchens said was the Conservative Party, well, it's not really a Conservative Party, it's a woke weft, the woke wefty party should die on the vine. They are not a Conservative Party. Jacob Rees-Mogg is an actual traditional Conservative with conservative principles. The rest of the woke wefty party are just following the woke wefty agenda, like the other woke wefties like Turdo and Horseyface that's now just disappeared in Canada. But Peter Hitchens' analysis, he had a wee tete-a-tete. I don't think I had tete-a-tete, but I wasn't quite sure the gist. I didn't follow it. The gist of the debate with him and Carol Benjamin from the Lotus Eaters. And I'm not sure, but I'm very surprised, because I think Peter has moved into a sort of I think he's more of an authoritarian liberal, but he's a bit sort of stern-faced. But I'd love to get a chat with him, find out where he actually is. Let's do his political compass test and let him understand where he is on the political spectrum. And I think it would help somebody like me interacting with him if we actually knew where he was on the political spectrum. So Peter, if you listen to this, do your political compass test, pal. And then we can actually have a debate. You're more than welcome on the Guerilla TV channel. So, is Peter Hitchens right that the Conservative Party are the problem? They're just a wefy wokey party now anyway, and they should wither on the vine, which is possibly what they're going to do under Rishi Sunak, the first Asian, not that matters, first Asian but wefy woke MP who's now still keeping the ERG, talking about, oh, we should have immigration controls, while there's 400 people rocking up to the beaches down in Dover doing nothing about that. In fact, going over and probably shifting across while lying to the British people, while his wife doesn't pay any taxes, while he's caused inflation. He's going to get absolutely destroyed in the next election. And whether or not Sarwar, a member of a child rapist death cult, is going to lead Scottish Labour into not a victory but certainly increased in the numbers, that's something that would really be disgusting, and just shows you that I was right, that Labour is a globalist Islamo-Marxist party as well. So, but if Jacob could actually take part, let's hear Ian Dale, carry on Ian, your good political analysis. This is 4 years ago, by the way, just put it in time context.
He wouldn't get the numbers of MPs to vote. I can think of only 3 MPs that I know would definitely vote for Jacob Rees-Mogg if he stood to be leader of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, but he should still do it anyway. You're better to fight and lose than not to fight at all.
So it's a fantasy, absolute fantasy, to suggest that he could become the next leader of the Conservative Party. So let's strike that one off our list, shall we? Let's assume that...
Well, okay.
For expedient.
So that was LBC there. So this is UK News Today. It's got quite a few subscribers. Let's have a look at that.
Members, travel doesn't end at booking. It's getting a discount on your...
Jacob Rees-Mogg refuses to rule out...
So this is Jacob Rees-Mogg refuses to rule out Boris' comeback this year, but issues warning. So even if Boris did come back, and he's got maybe 2 years to turn the Conservative Party round, Boris is still going to continue to bring in the wokey wef agenda, which nobody wants, and it's about time that he brought in a proper agenda and stopped mucking about. And cut the taxes and let's go. The taxes are far too high under Big Nose Sunak.
Boris comeback this year, but issues warning. It comes as ongoing speculation of a comeback by the charismatic former PM is mounting. Jacob Rees-Mogg has refused to rule out Boris Johnson, making...
Well, so maybe Mogg, but I think Mogg would be a better Prime Minister than... if he got the right people around him, Mogg would be a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. Obviously both old Etonians and they're sort of keeping it in the family, but I think that has to be broken up as well over time.
Making a comeback this year. The Conservative former cabinet minister said a return to Downing Street by the ex-PM in 2023 was unlikely, but not impossible. However, Mr Rees-Mogg warned against ousting another Tory leader ahead of the next general election despite his support of Mr Johnson, saying it would make the party look completely scatty. The Tory MP, a key ally of the former PM, made the comments on Conservative Homes the Mogcast podcast. Host Paul Goodman asked Mr Rees-Mogg, "Do you think it is unlikely that there will be a leadership election this year that will return him?" The North East Somerset MP replied, "I think it's unlikely." Mr Goodman...
But I don't, and well, it will be up to the time where there is the council elections. At the council elections, has Bishy Rishi not actually transformed anything? He'll get slung. They're all on guard for losing their seats. This could be a massive wipeout of the Conservative Party.
Impressed, but not impossible. Mr Rees-Mogg said, "After what happened last year, I think suggesting things are impossible wouldn't be very wise. I could not be more supportive of him and thought it was a mistake to get rid of him. But the Tory party does not want to change leader again between now and an election. It would..."
So, as I said, Rishi is heading, the Titanic is heading towards the iceberg. Not only is the Labour Party increasing its size of lead, but also the Conservative Party is shrinking, and all the people are starting to go to the UK Reform. The UK Reform Party is building up such a head of speed that they could overtake the Conservative Party if they attack the Labour Party on their issues and try and get into the Red Wall Conservative Party, and they'd start to jump ship. If that goes, and they're already sitting in third place, continues up, we might see a whole change of momentum.
Would make us look completely scatty if we were to do so. It is very hard to remove a sitting Prime Minister, and I know two were removed last year, but it's still difficult to do. It is in the interests of the party and people like me to back the leader.
So, even if Boris came back, it still can be a poison chalice. So even them saying to Mogg, we required Boris back because Rishi's got no bounds. Whether or not that would make any significant difference for the Conservative Party is only for speculation. There's no way that we know if Boris comes back that that's going to be significant.
Regardless of whether we are toasting the king over the water privately at dinner. We need to support the leader who is in place in the interests of the party and the country. And I think plotting for another leadership contest is a mistake, an error of judgment.
They're dead in the water. So what the actual MPs we're looking at is, under Rishi Sunak, am I going to lose my seat? If the answer's yes, get rid of Rishi Sunak. That's how the Conservative Party work. If we are getting no increase in the actual opinion polls under Rishi Sunak, it has to go. And that's how brutal the Conservative Party are. The more that the UK Reform Party climb up above into third, up to 12%, they then start to suck in both Labour and Conservative Brexiteers. It then starts to get more and more likely as that 12, 13, 14%, it then sucks in more and more from both Labour and the Conservative Brexiteers. Because the UK Reform then looked like a more credible extension of what the Brexiteers, whether they be on the left, middle or right, actually believe. That the Brexiteers will then say, well, UK Reform are actually going to reform things, and we're actually going to get a decrease in taxation, we're going to get proper immigration controls, we're going to get all the things that we actually want, privatise the BBC, we're going to get everything they want, which is not going to be done under either the Conservatives or the Labour Party, who are just going to be WEF adjacent, WEF puppets in this Parliament. We can just say a plague in all your houses, and then that's you all finished.
Mr. Rees-Mogg's comments come amid ongoing speculation that Mr. Johnson could make a sensational return to number 10 in the future. The Uxbridge and South Ruislip MP was forced out of number 10 in September following a series of scandals including Partygate. But there are suggestions he could be eyeing up a return as the Tories continue to flounder in the polls under Rishi Sunak. Mr. Johnson, who led the Conservatives to their biggest landslide in decades in 2019, considered a comeback bid following Liz Truss's resignation in October. But he later ruled himself out of the race, having never officially entered, despite having the 100 nominations required from Tory MPs to make it to the ballot.
Well, he should have done it, and he should have gone for it. All this, and Thatcher did exactly the same. You should be in it to win it, and that should be it.
Party members.
Well, look what's happened by him not doing that. We've got Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, two absolute disasters. So if you're telling me that Mogg's not more of a competent potential Prime Minister than Truss or Sunak, then I would really question that. So there must be big problems in the selection of MPs in the Conservative Party.
PM admitted he could not unite his warring party, but insisted he was well placed to deliver a Conservative victory at the 2024 general election, and that if he had gone ahead...
So, I mean, we're only a year, 18 months away from this. So this is... the Conservative Party are the Titanic heading towards the iceberg right now. At this point, they have made a mess of it.
With his leadership bid, there was a very good chance he would have won against Mr. Sunak.
Yeah, and if
so he finally
and that's correct. If Boris had got to the membership, we would have beaten Sunak and Truss. So, and they wouldn't have got rid of him. So again, that was the parliamentary party. The parliamentary party strong-armed to get Big Nose Sunak out, and he's useless.
And whether it's the United Kingdom or just today...
Well, oh look, what's that over in the corner there? Is that a top secret file behind that flag, Mr. Senator?
And whether it's the United Kingdom or just today, we've got news. Rashid.
Woo, woo! The guy from the WEF has made it. Woo! Our pal. Rashid Sunak.
Sunak is now.
Rashid Sunak. There's a top secret file behind you, Mr. President, somewhere. Is that right, poking out there? Oh, no, sorry, I apologise, that's not it. That's your bribe from the Russians, isn't it?
Now the Prime Minister.
Not the Russians, the Ukrainians, sorry, I'm smearing the Russians at this point.
As my brother would say, go figure.
Is he taking a bribe as well?
And the Conservative Party.
Rules for thee but not for me. Do you get exemptions? Does the FBI and the CIA not investigate certain Democratic politicians?
Expected to become the Prime Minister, I think, tomorrow when he goes to see the King.
As you...
Oh, brilliant, no. And he's been great so far. Absolutely useless. Right, come on then. Let's hear it, big man. Let's hear it, Maya. So, Myers does some great stuff. Maya Tootsie Wootsie. If you don't join, you can press this join button, give him some money. So this is Jacob Rees-Mogg, rise up against Rishi Sunak, socialist policies. Brilliant, Maya, brilliant. When did you do this? When did you do this, buddy? When is this? I can't see a date. Where's the date? So this is the 8th of November last year. Obviously. Let's go.
Ahead for Rishi Sunak's new cabinet as he sent Jacob Rees-Mogg onto the backbenchers and turned him into an official anti-government rebel. He's good when it comes to debating in the House of Commons. He's good at raising the right questions. And that was the whole problem with even Theresa May and David Cameron. And I know that obviously back then, during the David Cameron days, Rees-Mogg was still pretty new. But now he became more popular inside the Conservative tent, especially with the grassroots and even non-Conservative Tories like him. Some people don't like him, but that's fine. You know, he has not been perfect as a Conservative, obviously, but because he had to side with the government in the past. This time, it's actually about all the economic policies and fiscal policies. One of them is the capital gains tax. They basically are going to be...
So, I mean, you can see the irony that his wife that isn't paying taxes, yet he's raising everybody else's taxes. I mean, you couldn't really write it, could you?
Raising all these taxes, at the same time printing money, at the same time not really cutting. And my fear is when they're going to be cutting the government spending, instead of focusing on government waste, they might actually do a George Osborne and hit the frontline public services, which will be quite chaotic for the country. Now, one of the issues with this is that, of course, the capital gain tax and the whole thing is just idiotic. They're going after areas that they shouldn't. And you could actually get the rich and the corporations to pay their fair share in tax. Go after them, make sure they're not really doing tax evasion and all that illegally. Fine. But Jacob Rees-Mogg said that capital gain tax is an inefficient tax where people simply delay transactions when it is too high. Increasing it is therefore economically inefficient and leads to the poor allocation of capital. This weakens economic growth. There will be a risk.
That's what all the diversity offices and all this nonsense is, to weaken economic growth. The Conservative Party haven't grown the economy over the years. They've weakened it because that's what the underlying WEF want. They could have cut taxes. They haven't done it because they're all basically just shilling for baldy Dr. Evil in Davos.
The property market already affected by rising interest rates of any change to the capital gain tax, as landlords may seek to leave the market. This is all classic economic 101, where people on the socialist side don't understand economics, so they're just looking at a black and white blanket policy. They for example, they just read the concept of...
Yeah, I know, but was this not Big Nose that was wanting to bring this in? Meyer, was this not Rishi Sunak's policy? They wants to bring in more and more socialism. I think he's in the wrong party.
Governments raise taxes, so they say on paper. So if the rich hold all the
what
wealth,
are you guys saying anyway? Hold on, Maya, hold on. Let me just get this. Find out what the boys are saying. The boys back down. What are you guys saying? Flathead ruined me. I must be the British establishment at work here, because here's their Commonwealth white country.
So that means wealth is limited resource, right? Which is not, by the way. And they say, okay, so if we just tax them all, then we'll have enough funding. That's a whole different argument when it comes to capital gain tax, obviously. We're just talking about the basic concept. But that makes no sense, because if it was as easy as that, socialist countries, capitalist countries, social democratic countries would have all done the same thing, and it would have always worked. It doesn't. Now, this argument is not to say that, leave the rich alone or let the corporations do whatever they want. No, absolutely not. There's definitely nuance in this. There's definitely balance in this. You don't really tax...
Really, great analysis there by Meyer. So that's Jacob Rees-Mogg rise up against Rishi Sunak's socialist policies. Am I still going here? Should I move over a bit? Where am I?
I see. The country. Now, so they're just looking at it black and white.
Moving over.
Policy.
Is that better?
They, for example, they just read the concept of...
Yeah, I know.
We're just talking about nuance in this. There's definitely...
Am I in the right spot now? Where am I? That's better. I should be sitting here. Should have a mark. Anyway. Rise up against Rishi Sunak's socialist policies. So, yeah, great analysis there by Meyer as usual. I'm always impressed by Meyer's political commentary. He's really great. Where was that thing I was actually looking for? I had it all mapped out. No, that's not it. No. 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 Damn. Right, so let me just try and get this up. So this is Maya talking about them.
What is holding you back from leaving your 9 to 5, becoming financially free and living life on your terms?
This is it, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob Rees-Mogg is officially preparing to replace Rishi Sunak.
Now, the thing about him replacing Rishi Sunak is not that he's not going to be more competent, which he is, and better policies and a greater understanding of economics, all of which he is, and a Brexiteer and a terrific fellow. But the issue with him replacing Rishi Sunak is timing. And as I said, is it too late to turn around the Conservative Party? And it would be a hero if he did it, but it's obviously Rishi Sunak's not going to turn around the Conservative Party. And is the current internal parliamentary Conservative Party going to implement the proper reforms that are actually required, or do we need to just sack the lot of them? This is an imponderable.
As the next Tory party leader, chunk of people who've completely given up on Toryism, and there are some
who... It's not really Toryism. It's not really... They're not conserving anything. They're basically... they're implementing the WEF agenda, WEF wokery. It's WEF politics for you. It's communism for you. WEF communism. Woke communism for you, and corporatism for us. That's basically the Conservative agenda just now. We'll take your taxes and spend them on whatever we choose, me and our friends decide to spend them on, at grotesque figures.
Who are still a bit hopeful, saying, if you could get your Rees-Moggs, your Lee Andersons, your Kemi Badenoch.
So Lee Anderson as a potential and a potential rival. A northern, I think he's a northern constituency, or certainly Midlands constituency MP, and he is very popular. But again, like Mogg, maybe a Mogg, Lee Anderson, Badenoch combination, but whether or not there's still a huge significant proportion of the Conservative Party who are WEF adjacent and Remainers. The party, I thought the party had split, and they brought in more Brexiteers at the last election, but they don't seem to have done that. They just seem to have brought in the same type of individual, and there's no change. So this is going to cause problems. This is going to cause problems for the Conservative Party, because they have to then gaslight the public, because they can't actually bring in the correct people. Biggest update is now the Jacob Rees-Mogg himself, following the fall of Boris Johnson. Even at the time, especially when it started a year ago, and then a few months later, we had Liz Truss for about 10 minutes. Then we had Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt's coup. He actually was considering to run at the time, but it didn't happen. One of his sources said that Jacob thought about running after Boris overnight, but decided that his loyalty to the Prime Minister meant that... Well, I would suggest that you should strike while the iron's hot, in a political sense. That he had not put a team in place to be able to win a contest, while others had. Also, Liz Truss was quick out of the blocks, which meant that it was difficult for him to run against her. So that was actually... This is one of the... Well, I would suggest that Mogg would be far more competent than Liz Truss. I already had my misgivings about Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak should never be in this position. There should have been a competition. Flaws of... Mogg should have stood either at the last two leadership elections, and especially against Rishi Sunak, and just gone for it. He had nothing to lose. On loyalty, because even people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who still say they have their own principles. I would suggest that Ian Dale's probably right, and they probably would be questioning numbers. Whether the support for Boris and Boris would have got behind Mogg for his loyalty to Boris and supporting Mogg as a leader, time would only tell. But I'm telling you that Sunak's only got a period of time now, and there's no bounce in the polls, and the vast majority of the MPs are looking towards the goal line. But they don't want for the Conservatives to just completely be rebels for the sake of it. So he was a good team player in Boris's cabinet, even though he had massive fights with the cabinet. He disagreed with a lot of key policies, but he still remained in the cabinet. The problem with that is that if the time comes that there's an opportunity for you to take charge or stand for party leadership, you've got to strike while the iron's hot. You're quite right, Maya. In an election, you're not ready because you don't have a team. There's no base. There's no establishment. But why would Boris's team not just fall in? Why would Boris not just stand support Mogg, and Boris's team not just fall in behind Mogg? That would have made the most sense, because they're similar but not exactly the same. I think Mogg is far more astute when it comes to economics, and what anybody should do is go in and sack anybody that's in the Bank of England. Whereas Liz Truss was preparing for this for years. And because they're WEF adjacent as well. Funny thing is, even though she was preparing for this for years and years, she still messed it up. So that was funny to see. But things could definitely change. As I said, there are those like Lee Anderson, there are those like Kemi Badenoch alongside Jacob Rees-Mogg, and as I said, maybe even people like Suella Braverman. They give a bit of hope to some of the grassroots of the Tory. Yeah, but that's all it is. It's only hope. It's not. You need a new party with firm beliefs, and it's just a WEF party now. WEF wokey party, and that's not a conservatism. The woke stuff's communism. So they're imposing communism, racial communism for you, open borders, while you're being replaced in work. for being ethnically British, and that's the so-called Conservative Party, who are just following the wokey WAF agenda.
A party. So because the grassroots of the Tory party, the membership overall, are right wing. They're not like the staff.
Yeah, but so how are they electing these MPs then? How are these MPs being put in there when they're not actually representing the constituency of Conservatives, which I do agree with you, Maya. The grassroots of the Conservative Party is actually ideologically conservative. Why are these people then being able to get slipped in who are obviously following the WEF wokey agenda?
Establishment. But the problem here is that the Conservative Party is run by a centralised machine.
Well, there you go. You've just said it yourself then. So obviously whoever's controlling that centralised machine is parachuting weffy wokey MPs in that are not representing the ideology of the constituency, which is why so many Conservatives, actual proper Conservatives, have jumped over to UK reform. And that's why I think that if Richard Tice gets in about the Labour support, he could actually take a lot of the Labour support. Once that starts getting 15, 16, 17% and both parties are starting to feel it, then we'll actually see some real interesting events happening.
The actual deep establishment of the Tory party, the CCHQ, or the Conservative Party headquarters, they're never going to allow these guys to take over. So there is a massive disconnect between the Westminster Tories and the rest of the country. The hard-working volunteers, the grassroots members.
That's correct. All correct, Meyer. All correct. I think you're watching the Guerilla TV channel, boys. I'm only kidding. But you're doing some great work. Great work, Meyer. Correct, as usual. So, there was a whole list of videos upload date. Oh, here we go. Oh, Mogg should be the next Conservative leader. Who's this from? Let's do shouts. Now, whether or not he's the next Conservative leader, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Rishi will not last a disaster at the next general elections. He's going to be the one, the captain of the Titanic as the Titanic goes down. So he's not going to be forgiven. He'll be out if he even retains his seat. Whether or not Mogg would take on after that, whether or not the Labour Party, although they're incompetent, full of absolutely inept politicians, absolutely worse than useless, they should all be sacked as well. Whether or not that's the time for Mogg, time will only tell, but he should have either fought Trust and gone back in and fought Sunak again. Should have got Boris to back him, and because he was always loyal to Boris, and that would have made a hell of a difference. So, well, Scott, there we go. I think this guy's a left winger.
Last year.
So this is Bowler Hat Man. I think that's a class war.
752 companies.
Well, after what I can only suspect was the mammoth, shall we say, going through the bacon verse. I do apologise, that was a long video, but
nothing like being racist against other white people. That's brilliant, aye.
Oh my, it needed to be a long video, because going through Penny Mordaunt's bizarre Baconverse fan fiction, it unfortunately needed to be a long video. So hopefully this is also going to be quite a fun video, but it also might be more about being a potential leadership candidate, except he's never really gone for it. Now, is this, shall we say, Jacob's time to try and take the mantle? Because he's talking, especially in this article when we get into it, about taking over from Sunak, and especially taking over after the loss. So I want to reaffirm this. We have got the Conservative Party openly saying, yeah, we're going to lose the next election and we're going to lose big. So in that scenario, Sunak will have to step down and we will have yet another Tory leadership contest. Now, I've been saying this for a while. the factionism in the Tory party is going to go absolutely wild, because compared to the last two leadership elections that we've had, there is nothing to offer. There is nothing to offer. You can't go, Suella, how about, you be, in charge of the Home Office, or I'll make you in charge of the Foreign Office. There is nothing to offer. So how these different factions can come together and maybe even assume some sort of coherency, certainly in a post, shall we say, loss Conservative world, it's going to be interesting to see. But we're going to go diving into this because Jacob Rees-Mogg...
And I think what will happen is, there's already a split in not conservatism, but certainly between the globalists and the more localitarian, I don't even really think that's a word, but I've just made it up. Local people who believe in local accountability, such as UK reform, against the globalist centralising monopoly of power that the so-called Conservative Party seem to be promoting, with all and the Labour Party and the Liberals and the SNP and the Greens. That they're all promoting with the backing of British media and potentially the aristocracy. They're all promoting this centralisation of European power to Brussels and EU and then to the one world government. So whether or not Jacob Rees-Mogg after Sunak gets pumped being a shill for the WEF, or there is going to be an actual split, so we then will still have this dual party within a party. We'll have the wokey WEF and the more actual traditional Conservatives, and the traditional Conservatives are still going to be more of a minority than the wokey WEF mob. So I can't see that surviving over a long time, because we all know now what the wokey left agenda is, and a lot of people don't like it, whether they be left, centre or right.
Apparently, a Coinpayments article is considering this very seriously. Now, of course, we've seen this type of article before many years ago when Mogg was very, very big and very popular. And remember the whole Mogmentum movement that was tried to start the youth movement around Jacob Rees-Mogg. Yeah, it didn't really last, but there you go. It was a real thing for a while. And of course, he was talking about, taking over. Oh, he's going to, he's the guy, he's the candidate to take over after Theresa May. It didn't really happen. But anyway, we're going to go diving into this because this...
He should have at least fought one of the last three leadership elections, if not all of them.
To be honest, I think sets a very interesting course for the future of the Conservative Party and what could happen and the hilarity we could see in this. So, before we go diving into this, please do remember to hit that like, share. I surprised myself with how much had really happened in 2022. Up a bid to run for the Tory party leadership should Rishi Sunak tank the next general election. The former business secretary of 53 is understood to be tempted by the prospect of becoming the standard bearer of the right wing of the party, should they endure a battering at the polling booths. So you can already see this, that Rees-Mogg, being a standard bearer of the right wing of the party, that's not just the right wing of the party. Really, it's the right wing of the, so we say the right-wing libertarian part of the party, the free market fundamentalist part of the
great
party.
I would say he was socially conservative, but economically libertarian. I would agree with you there.
That's what he wants to be leader of. So it's entirely possible. Like I say, he was head of the ERG at one point, so he's certainly got the credentials to do it. But back to it. So the current polls have estimated the Conservatives have been trailing Labour by up to 20 points, and with a general election looming as soon as January of 2025. I don't think we'll get to that. Honestly, if we get to January 2025 and we have a general...
But what I can't see anything that will stop us getting to January 2025, and I'll guarantee that Rishi will want to take as long as possible unless he gets some sort of bounce in the opinion polls. But he will want to take as long as possible to get there, because he's doing nothing just now in the opinion polls, as you rightly pointed out.
An election at that date, I do not think that will happen. I think in 2023, at some point, there will be a general election, because there is no way in heaven or earth that Sunak can survive until the end of 2023. With the May local elections coming up, is going to be his first big challenge. There's already talks of other potential rebellions in the works. There's strikes that are heavily affecting Sunak and his government, could also potentially bring him down. There's just so much going on. I would be shocked if we get to this time next year and Sunak has managed to survive. I really will be truly shocked. But
yeah, well, he could still do it, though. The fact that the things that you think might happen might not happen. So it's no guarantee that he couldn't do it. But you are right, though. He has got a very much an uphill struggle, and still implementing the WEF agenda in the background, subtly, with the tacit silence of the British media.
Hey, you never know. So, back to it. So the then Brexit Opportunities Minister has also said to have been considering putting his name in among the runners and riders after his close ally and ex-Prime Minister Boris Johnson stepped down in the summer. Now that's interesting. That is very interesting, because there's now a clear picture forming of, does Boris Johnson actually want to run again? Might he?
Yeah, but Boris Johnson just ended up a Wookie Wefty as well. So I think that's why people are sick of the Conservative Party, because all we're going to get is Wookie Wefty stuff, even from the so-called right wing.
He instead decide he wants to be the kingmaker in the party, because a lot of people, if you've been like I do, I watch Conservative Home very often, and very recently there was a big poll about who was your favourite backbencher and who came second. It was Boris Johnson.
Oh, Boris Johnson. Yeah.
So still in the parliamentary party, there is a lot of support for Boris Johnson. Even in the parliamentary party, we have seen that there is support. Maybe not strong support, but there is support for him still there. So if Johnson decides he's going to become a kingmaker and step aside...
Look, if you have no interest in making money from the currency markets...
That makes sense. Or maybe he goes, you make me, I don't know, your second or whatever. Then potentially that is what Johnson could certainly see be doing. I could certainly see Johnson...
So he's basically just this guy, what's his name? Has basically just said... is this guy Potato that the guys have been going on about? That he's said exactly what I've already just said, and I haven't watched this before.
Johnson deciding to take that role and not being, shall we say, the leader, but more a cheerleader, which is really what Boris Johnson's role should have always been, being the cheerleader for his sort of the leaders and sort of...
So his political analysis is exactly the same as mine. We probably come from different parts of the spectrum. But he's correct. Everything that he's just said, that I've just said 5 minutes ago. So both agreeing independently, without me having watched this, of what our political analysis is, which is correct.
Or trying to pass their policy through to the wider public. That's really what his role sort of should be.
But, and I think Mog's more intelligent than Boris Johnson. Politically intelligent.
To it. So Jacob Rees-Mogg is reportedly weighing up the bid to run for the Tory party leadership should Sunak tank the next election. Mr. Rees-Mogg is said to have been tempted to run for leader after Johnson was finally forced to accept his support was crumbling and his premiership was doomed. One source close to the former business secretary said Jacob thought about it, overnight, but decided that his loyalty to Boris meant that he had not put a team in place to be able to win a contest while others had. Also, Liz was quick out of the blocks, which meant it was difficult for him to run against her, as we saw with Rishi Sunak's bid. So in the end, Mr. Rees-Mogg joined other Boris Johnson loyalists, such as Nadine Dorries, in backing Miss Truss, whose then time as Prime Minister infamously ended after less than 2 months. And bear in mind, that is the exact same idea that they have. Liz Truss and certainly Jacob Rees-Mogg, they are the same type. Those ideas were what he wanted. So if he was to actually seriously become Prime Minister and actually start to seriously push these far-right, crazy libertarian ideas...
Well, libertarianism isn't far right or far whatever. It's libertarianism is the opposite of authoritarianism. So it's not a far right, but he is on the libertarian right, I do agree, but it's certainly not far right. I don't think Mogg is a far right individual. Far right is anarcho-capitalism, and I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg is an anarcho-capitalist. So again, political analysis is from a political science point of view is incorrect here.
Which, bear in mind, are very, very unpopular, not only in his own party, but in the UK electorate.
Not at all. I would think that cutting taxes is a great idea. Cutting waste, cutting taxes, reducing the size of the public sector is a very clever idea.
As well, who do not want these crazy right-wing
They're not crazy. How is me being a taxpayer, having more money in my pocket, a crazy idea?
Libertarian ideas in, it will not be a easy win should he be leader.
Yeah, that's quite enough for him. What are you guys saying? Have you guys made any comments here? I'm just ignoring my baby gorillas today. No, not a sausage. Not a sausage. Right, so what else? Next leader of the Tory party. What else? Right, I've done him. Boris is backing and he regrets nothing. I mean, right, let's see, Mogg. Conservative leader. Update date. Is that Maya? Yep. I think that was the ones that I wanted to show you. Boris Johnson is the only realistic prospect. If
you sell courses or coaching online, please don't skip this ad. Give me just 2 minutes. I think this will really help you. You've probably noticed...
The Tory party has to unite, that we have been too divided, and it's striking that when Boris Johnson took over in 2019, we had been 30% behind in the polls. Shortly after he leaves, we're back to being 30% behind in the polls. I think he is the only realistic prospect who can unite the party and has a well-shown election-winning record. A lot of people are now clamouring for a new general election because they say the person who won the election is no longer in charge. Boris Johnson won that mandate. He won it from the British people. He won it for 5 years. I think it would be only right to bring back the person who has a mandate and govern well for the next 2 years. That is the challenge for the Conservative Party. Boris Johnson clearly has a mandate. Now, constitutionally, a new Prime Minister would not be forced to have a general election, but the Labour Party is already demanding one.
So, if Boris Johnson comes back, obviously there's no appetite for Rishi Sunak. If Boris Johnson came back, again, appointed the poison chalice, could Boris Johnson then save the Conservative Party by his comeback? Rishi Sunak be out of his situation? Is that what's going to happen? So I think that's us. I think I've had enough tonight. How long did they go? I thought I was only going to do 30 minutes, and what time to start, so it's been just over about an hour. I hope that was informative and hope you got something out of that. Let me just make sure that I've been on for this period of time. Let's find out. Here we go. I think that's us. I think I've had enough tonight. How long did they go? I thought I was only going to do 30 minutes, and what time to start, so it's been just over about an hour. I hope that was informative and hope you got something out of that. Let me just make sure that I've been on for this period. Well, that's it, my baby gorillas. You know I love you guys. Let's go. I'm out here. Going to get my dinner. And we're off.